You may have seen the criticism passive voice on your essay in the past, but did you really understand what you did wrong? Today, I hope in this video to help you understand the difference between active and passive voice and how you can use each effectively. In writing, we have two main kinds of voice, active voice and passive voice, and just like the pictures indicate, active voice and passive voice pretty much mean what they sound like. An active voice shows that the verb is, well, acting. Because the subject acts on or completes the verb, we say it's an active voice. Not that hard to remember, right? In the sentence, the dog jumps on the girl, the dog is our subject of the sentence. It's the one doing the action. It's jumping, whereas the girl is the object. It would seem pretty silly if the girl jumped on the dog. So we say that this is in the active voice because the subject of the sentence, the dog, is the one completing the action, jump. Similarly, in the sentence, Christy will give a book report to the class. Christy is the subject of the sentence, and she is the one who is giving a book report. The class isn't giving the report, nor is the book doing any giving. So this is considered an active voice sentence. The subject, Christy, is the one completing the action, giving. And the newest excuse students use, the computer ate my paper rather than the dog. The computer is the one doing the eating, so it is the subject completing the action, and again, it's the active voice. Passive voice sentences, on the other hand, are flipped around. The subject and the object switch places. The subject becomes the recipient of the action. And because the subject is no longer completing the action, it's being acted on, or it's being passive. Such sentences are in the passive voice. The subject is just kind of hanging out there, waiting to be acted on, whereas the object is the one doing the action. If you look at these sample sentences, all we've done is taken the earlier examples of active voice and changed them around. The subjects of the previous sentences have been moved later in the sentences, and the objects have been moved to the beginning. So the sentence, the dog jumped on the girl, becomes the girl was jumped on by the dog. The dog, the subject, is now at the end of the sentence, and the girl, the object, is now at the beginning. Similarly, Christy will give a book report to the class becomes a book report will be given by Christy to the class. And the computer ate my paper becomes my paper was eaten by the computer. You can hear these are a little bit wordier and a little bit more of a tongue twister, which is part of the reason why your teacher will tell you active voice is generally better, but we'll get to that in a moment. And now we move on to the reasons for using active voice. Consider this first sentence. The waiter dropped the tray of food versus the tray of food was dropped by the waiter. The first sentence gives that sense of immediacy. You can almost hear that tray crash to the ground. Whereas the second one, I almost envision it dropping lightly like a feather onto the floor. You don't hear that sense of immediacy. There's no action present in the sentence, which is why most writers prefer to use the active voice. It's more direct. It conveys that sense of immediacy that just isn't there with a passive voice. Another reason for using the active voice is because it shows a clear relationship between the subject and the action. Take a look at these two sentences. Your request for funding has been denied by the review committee. The relationship between the denial of funding and who's actually doing the denying is much less clear than the second sentence, the review committee denied your request for funding. People often use the passive voice if they want to obscure who really completed the action, such as the review committee might want to do if they're letting you know they're denying your funding. However, you might appreciate the much more direct approach that comes with the second sentence. The active voice sentence pattern propels the reader forward through your writing, and it avoids weak prose. In general, it's the better way to go. Passive voice does have its place, however. Sometimes passive voice can be used when you don't know or you don't want to reveal the performer of an action. You can also use passive voice when you want to emphasize the person or thing that received an action. When that's more important than whoever did the action, passive voice is actually preferable. Now that you understand the difference between active and passive voice, hopefully you can make more deliberate decisions in your writing, which will put you on the path towards communicating more clearly and effectively.